Hello, I'm Terry Kolath. I'm here today with Professor Adrian Kerr, and we're talking about a 5-session series he's doing for us this summer, and the topic is Ancient Rome, the history of its rise and fall. Thank you for joining me, Adrian.
Thank you, Terry. It's always a privilege to be here at Shell Point.
Well, let's give a little bit of an overview about why we're looking at Ancient Rome.
Ancient Rome spanned probably about 1,000 years, which most people are surprised at when you say. But Rome was still influencing the world all the way through till 1200 in the Middle Ages because of the Eastern Roman Empire. Most people think that the Roman Empire conked out around 450 AD when the barbarians conquered Rome. And so that's a fair assumption. But of course, those kingdoms that formed the barbarian kingdoms of France and Italy and Spain carried on using Roman style, Roman clothes, Roman language. So they became the medieval countries that we know today. Meanwhile, in the East, the Roman Empire carried on for another 1,000 years. Constantinople was the center. This was the richest part of the empire and was able to fend off invasions and attacks from barbarians and Persians and eventually Turks. And finally it fell around 1400 by the Ottomans, and then it became part of the Ottoman Empire known as Istanbul. So the Roman Empire spreads probably 1,500 years and has had a huge influence. Today, for instance, we look around us and we see Roman roads, which are 1,000 years old. We see Roman castles, we see Roman baths, we see colosseums, we see forums, we see wonderful cities in the desert, North Africa, which were abandoned because they ran out of water, but we can see exactly what those cities look like. And of course, there's the cultural things as well. We speak a language which came out of Latin, and we have part of our law is Roman law. Our months of the year are named after Roman gods, and so on. That a lot of what we do today is Romanesque. Very impressed. The Romans were remarkable, and we admire them because although they were rather brutal in their way in which they conquered cities and towns and areas like Gaul, for instance, they were ruthless people, but then it was a ruthless world in those days. They also brought civilization. The Pax Romanorum. So if you were conquered, that was bad news, but then you got the benefits. You got the benefits of running water, stability, the army protected you from invaders, they had police forces, they had good roads, and they had law systems, judges, courts, etc. And so it was quite something in those dark ages to actually have an empire like Rome which spread from Scotland all the way to Baghdad. It was a huge area. And of course, they had a common system. That was the marvelous thing about the Roman Empire. Unlike the Greeks, who were all city-states and vying amongst themselves for supremacy and never created a uniform empire, the Romans had one emperor, one language, one set of laws, and they applied them to the whole of the greatest empire in the West at that time.
And it lasted in unbelievable ways. I can remember my Roman Catholic friends hearing Mass only in Latin.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And the interplay between Rome and Christianity is part of the talks that we're going to cover, because round about the middle of the Roman Empire period, the beginning of the empire effectively and the end of the Republic, Christianity was born. And the 300 years it took for Christianity to get a hold of the Roman Empire, because it became the national religion of the empire at one point, and carried on for another 1,000 years. Christianity spread through Rome, and Rome was Christian, which is good news, but of course it also has negative aspects, because all of the other great pagan temples, particularly in Egypt, were considered to be inappropriate in a Christian world, and so the Library of Alexandria was raided and found to be full of pagan books, and it was destroyed. The temples of Egypt were not Christian, clearly, and therefore they were either destroyed or converted into churches, and the priests were then made redundant, so the Egyptian culture died.
So clearly, Adrian, this is going to, if we're able to take the entire 5 sessions, it's going to enlighten us a lot.
It will indeed. It's a fascinating story.
Well, I hope you can join us for all 5, but the good part about these 5 sessions on Rome is each one stands alone, and you can register for each one separately. If you happen to be doing some traveling this summer, you'll still get an interesting slice of ancient Rome, the history of its rise and fall, with Professor Adrienne Kehr.